Hi everyone, so today I'm going to show you some techniques on how to do some nice inked backgrounds. I'm going to start by showing you the sort of tools that you're going to need. First up, it's the Distress Oxide inks. There are other inks available, I just find that they're best when you're making inked backgrounds. I really like them, they've got a chalky sort of look to them and they're really good. They react with water. They do stain your hands a little bit when you're using them, so I would recommend not doing it before going to a big event or an interview or something. I like to use these sponges. These are actually just makeup sponges I got off Amazon. I find they're really good because you can get quite close to the paper and you've got a bit more control of it that way. I know some people do like to use little sponges on sticks. My mum personally does that, and I know loads of other crafters who do. It's perfectly fine to do either one of those. Everyone's got their own style. I just like how much control you've got with these little sponges. Next up, you have always got to have a baby wipe on hand. Really good for wiping up your surface afterwards, and there's also some techniques you can use with it. Kitchen roll, exactly the same, wiping surface and some good techniques with it, dabbing off the inks. Little misty spray, this is just filled with water. Some of the techniques I'm going to show to you today are going to need lots of water for it. Next up, we have got this tape. I can never remember what this is called, but this is really good for making sure that the ink doesn't go on certain parts of your card, or taping down a stencil to your card as well. I'll do a video on stenciling at another point in the future. Another really important thing that you would need is an acrylic block. This is only for one of the methods that I'm going to show you. If you want to do a whole card, I'd recommend getting a bigger block than I've got here. You could also use the mat that I'll point out in a second. Anything that resists water really is good for the method that I'll show you later, because it's going to be a water-based method to make a watercolour card. Okay, so the first technique I'm going to show you is I like to call stripes. It's really simple. I'm going to be using the Mustard Seed and Lucky Clover inks for this one. You can do this diagonal lines as I'm going to do on this demo, or you can do it as horizontal stripes, vertical stripes. I normally like to use this as like a rainbow background. Baby cards, I quite often do rainbow backgrounds because I don't think you should have one colour on them. They like lots of colour on their cards. So this method, I'm just going to get my sponge, I'm going to put lots and lots of ink on, and I'm just going to pull the sponge over the card, even pressure the whole time. I like to start off relatively light and then put a bit more pressure as I go, just so that I can always build up the colour, but you can't take it away very easily afterwards. So I'm just starting with my Lucky Clover, pulling it over the card, doing the diagonal stripes. I'm only using 2 colours this time, but I do normally use 3 or 7, depending on if I'm doing my rainbow or if I'm just doing some nice stripes. I always find that if you do horizontal lines for this, it makes a nice little sunrise or sunset sort of design if you're using a scene stamp. So I have finished with my Lucky Clover. Always try and make sure you put the lids on your ink straight away. I do often forget. As long as it goes on quickly, it shouldn't dry out. So I'm now going to take my Mustard Seed and ink that up nice and thoroughly, and just go between the gaps of the green. I will later blend it into the green, just to make sure that they smooth over. I'll probably get some green again later and just make sure that it's pulled into the yellow a bit more, so it's not as stark a contrast. Or you can leave it like this so that it's a big contrast. That's up to you. So yeah, just using my yellow to fill in the gaps, and that's the nice stripe card method done. So the next one is corners. It's pretty self-explanatory again. It's just corners on the edge of the card. I'm actually going to use 3 colours with this one. I'm going to use my Candied Apple, Spice Marmalade and Mustard Seed. I like doing quite fiery colours. I always have some colours that I use together every time, so the red, orange and yellow, blue and green, or green and yellow, purple and pink and blue. So yeah, I've got my certain colours. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my sponge and I am going to do the corner of this card. If you're doing 2 colours, you want to go just beyond the middle of the card. If you are doing 3 corners, you want to go just before the middle of the card. So I've kind of overdone it a little bit on one of these corners, but it doesn't matter because the orange will cover it up. As you can see there, I was just pointing to a little bit of the card. I used some tape so that I could cut the circle out of the middle of this, and the tape does leave a bit of a residue which reacts with the ink. So if you want it a nice smooth thing, I recommend don't using the tape going through your die cut machine. For me, it doesn't really matter because the final design, you're not going to notice those little resist bits. So I'm now going to go for my lightest colour. So I went for the darkest first, now I'm going for my yellow, which is my mustard seed. And I'm going in the opposite 2 corners to where I did the red. I'm just going to firmly make sure it's all over. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to get my orange, which is the spice marmalade, and I am going to just blend into the 2 gaps. So as you can see, the spice marmalade goes really, really well into the yellow, but also really well into the red. They are designed to work together. There are other shades of red, yellow, orange, all the colours really that Tim Holtz's Distress Oxides have, but these are just the ones that I've got. I think they work really well together. With this card, I didn't actually need to go right into the middle because there's another piece of card that's going to be going on top of this for the design I've got in mind for this piece. But just to show you how it would look and make sure that I've inked up everywhere so there's not going to be any gaps, I do like to go into the middle. As I said, you can use more than one colour. Okay, the next one I'm going to do is called Fade Out. So I'm going to take my Lucky Clover ink and I'm just going to ink it up. You do need a mat for this one to protect your table because rather than starting straight onto the card, I'm actually going to just slowly in circles start on the outside and go onto the card. You can leave it with this bit so you don't need to go further into the card later if you don't want. I will be just to show you the contrast. But this is always a really nice little border to a piece of cardstock. So I am going to go in little circles. That's the method that I found that works best for me. And I'm going to pull it into the card, putting more pressure on the outside than I am on the inside. When I go onto the inside, I'm not going to re-ink. I am just going to use the ink that's on my sponge. If I think I need some more, then I will start on the outside again and then go back into the middle afterwards. So see here, I've gone back to my ink and I'm just pulling more onto the edge of the card to make sure there's a really big contrast with the middle. I've not made this particularly smooth this time round just because that's what's going to work with this card. But if you want to make it smooth, you just need to make sure that your circles are really, really regular. Next one that I'm going to do is straight to the card. This will make a bit more sense when you see the technique. So I'm going to get my mustard seed, which I will admit is kind of hard to see with this method, and my spiced marmalade. I'm going to take the pad and just draw very gently some stripes over it. I like to go in the same direction, but you can go in different directions depending on what you want from this piece. The yellow isn't particularly easy to see on camera. I am sorry about that. Orange is a bit better. So I'm going to, I do try and show you, but it's not great. There are going to be white bits that show through this. That's just the nature of the design. I think in the messiness of it, I think it does look quite good when it's got some stamping over the top and different methods used as well on the other elements of the card. So I'm just going to go opposite direction with the spiced marmalade so it creates little cross hatchings. You can go the same direction as it. You can go all different directions with both colours. The next one is going to be Camouflage. Can't think of a better word for it other than blotches, so we're sticking with the name Camouflage. I'm going to take 3 different colours for this one. I would recommend 3 as being the minimum colours that you'll use for this one, just because of the nature of what it looks like. You can always do loads more than 3 colours, but I don't personally think that it works very well with just 2. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my spice marmalade and I am just going to randomly splotch it onto the paper with my sponge. The pressure that you put down doesn't need to be uniform because of the nature of this style. So you're just going to randomly place the colour. I use quite a lot of orange as opposed to the red and the yellow for this one, just because it's the middle colour. So yeah, as much pressure as you like. You can vary it up. You can do lots of pressure or not lots of pressure in certain spaces. I'm then going to go for my mustard seed and fill in some of the gaps, but not all, making sure to blend it into the orange wherever I go. So it's really good to make sure you've got a mat underneath, because if you accidentally go off the card, then it doesn't damage your table. Now I'm going to take my red and just fill in all the remaining gaps, because I'm only doing the 3 colours. Doesn't matter if I go over the yellow when they don't really blend in together. I usually use the orange between it. Doesn't matter because of the nature of the design. It's supposed to look a little bit random. So again, with this one you can see a bit of where the ink's resisting from the tape that I used. Doesn't matter with the design, but if it annoys you, then make sure that you don't use the tape on your one. What I'm going to do then, I'm just going to make sure my inks are out of the way, because the next bit is going to involve water, and if you put water onto your ink block it can ruin it later on. So you need your misty spray and a piece of kitchen roll. I am going to spray my card with the nozzle bit going just above the card rather than directly onto it. So it's going to be at an angle rather than a straight sort of direction. So this is going to be kind of hard to show you on the video. In person it looks a lot more clearer. If I had used some darker card, if I thought about it, then it might have shown up a little bit better. What I'm going to do after spraying it, I'm going to immediately use my piece of kitchen roll and I am going to lift up some of the colour. On some of the red patches here and some of the orange bits, you can see how it's worked, but it is kind of hard to show you on the camera, I'm afraid. It looks really nice. It's kind of a bit like a fake glitter style. The next one I'm going to do is very similar, but instead of going straight onto the card, you are going to go onto an acrylic block first. So I'm going to get my ink and I'm going to press it down onto my acrylic block really, really thickly. I am only using 2 colours with this just because I'm doing it on flowers rather than straight onto a card. As I said, 2 colours does work. I just don't think it's quite as good as using more colours. Then again, I do like loads and loads of colours. So now I'm just going to take my second colour, which is my mustard seed, and I'm going to press it in between the green bits. When you're doing embellishments, you don't really need to use the whole block. I've just got quite a few flowers to do and I want to make sure that there's lots of variety in the pattern style. So what I'm now going to do, I am going to spray up my block. More water the better really, in my opinion, with this one. So I'm just going to spray it on quite thickly. There we go. And then I'm going to use this on my flowers. I would actually recommend, if you're doing die cutting, that you try to dye the paper before you cut them out. It just makes it a bit easier. But I cut them out and then decided I wanted them colours rather than just white. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to press them onto the acrylic block. Make sure you press them down quite firmly so that the ink actually has time to go onto them. I repress them again just before I pick them up to make sure that there's lots and lots of colour. And then you can either scrape it over the way that I just did, or you can just pick it up. See, that one's got a little bit of white on it. Some people like that sort of style, or if you want them to be completely coloured the way that the second one and the third one are, then you can always go back afterwards and dip it into more of the ink. So I'm just going to lift up all the rest of my flowers. Oh, that one's not got very much on it at all. That one's nice and inked up. So there is a bit of variety on this. You can do this straight onto a mat. you can do different pools of colours and scrape it over the different colours rather than blending them onto a block. I just think that this is a bit more of a random and natural way to get the colours on. So you see, I don't like the white bits on the flowers for this card. Some of them I do, but not for this one. So I'm just going to go in and scrape up some more of the colour onto these flowers, just to fill in those white bits. I do actually have trouble with this last one, trying to get all the colour on. For some reason it didn't want to go onto the card. I have absolutely no idea why. So just, if that happens to you, just persist. Make sure you're scraping it over loads and loads of the card. The only issue you can have with this is it can make it very soggy. So make sure for this design in particular, you use very thick card. Okay, that's it from me today. I hope you found these different methods really useful. I'll be releasing the 2 cards that I made from these methods in a different video. Until then, see you later.